Hi, Michelle.
Hello, Nora. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Samantha. How are you?
I'm
Happy New
good.
Year.
How about you?
Good. It's Thursday. It's been a long couple of weeks already in 2021, so.
Yep.
It has, hasn't it?
It's Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Laura, thank you for sending out that the link to the old 1992 design guidelines. I have never seen them. Thank you.
No problem. I had to go into the office to get it though, because I don't think it had ever been scanned. So yeah, I knew where they were in the office, but I just had to wait till I actually was in there to get to get the copy of them. But they have a lot of good information on it. They're just not really utilized probably to their full extent.
Right.
I don't think we're as far off as we think we are with the new historic overlay district design guidelines. So makes me feel a lot more confident.
Laura, did you see the message from Elise? She will not be joining us.
Yes, I did. Thank you. And I have not heard back from Susan either. So I don't know if Susan's going to be joining us either. Okay. So I might be 2 down tonight. We do have a quorum. So I'll take that as a win.
Yes.
It's a small thing.
Is Mr. McReynolds joining us?
As far as I know, yes. I think like I said, everybody except Susan and Joe's here already, but he emailed me yesterday. And
all right. The next time you do a update to the motions, change out that roll call list.
Oh yes, yes. Sorry. Yes.
No, it's okay. It's all right. Well, I'll wait a minute more just to see if we have anyone else log in, and then we can, if we have folks here, we can get ourselves started. All right, we had a few more folks come in, so I think, Laura, let's kick things off then. All right, I'm going to call to order for the first time ever, I guess, in my time, the January 14th, 2021 Fairfax County Architecture Review Board meeting. So first of all, we have some special motions. So to conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectively both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA, the ARB needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It's a bit cumbersome, as I'm learning, so I'll ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of this ARB is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all other members. Accordingly, I am going to conduct a roll call to ask each ARB member participating in this meeting to state your name, the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear your other colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. All right, going down the list, Ms. Aubrey.
Yes, this is Michelle Aubrey, and I am in my residence in Alexandria, Virginia. And so far, I can hear everybody fine. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Burns.
Good evening. I'm in my living room in Howland Hills. I can hear everyone who has spoken so far just fine.
All right, Ms. Wan.
Good evening. This is Samantha Huang. I am at my home at Reston. I can hear everyone well.
All right, Mr. Kalinsky.
Good evening, Stephen Kalinsky, coming from my office in Alexandria, Virginia. You can hear everything fine.
All right, I've already heard from Ms. Murray. She's not going to be able to attend. Ms. Notkins, I do not see her on the list at this current time, so we'll mark her as absent for the moment. Ms. Orr?
Hi, I am here at my home in Alexandria, Virginia. I hear everyone well, and I'm sorry that my audio is still old computer, who knows?
All right, Mr. Plumpy.
Yes, hi. This is Joseph Plumpy from the Outer Banks of the universe, Fairfax, Virginia. I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Zellman.
This is Jason Zellman. I'm at my residence in Burke, Virginia, and I hear everyone just fine.
All right, and I do not see Mr. McReynolds on the list either, so at this time we'll mark him as absent. At this point, I will pass my virtual gavel to my vice chairman, Mr. Zellman, so that I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each ARB's member voice is adequately heard by each other member of the ARB.
All right, we have is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, I believe we have a second from Mr. Kalinsky. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. And the motion carries.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, as determined by roll call, 8 members of the ARB are present and therefore satisfy the ARB quorum minimum. The ARB bylaws state that a minimum of 6 members are required to determine a quorum. It is so moved.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a second. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? And the motion carries.
Third, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures. The fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communications is being used, and how we have arranged for public access for this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this ARB to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting. And that as such, FOIA's unusual procedures, which require physical assembly of the ARB and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the ARB may conduct this meeting electronically through WebEx, a county virtual meeting platform, and available for access through the ARB County website or through phone at 1-408-418-9388 with access code 179-344-7433. It is so moved.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, a second from Ms. Juan. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. And the motion carries.
Finally, it is next required that all matters addressed on today's agenda are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of this board's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second it.
Second?
All right, I think Mr. Kalinsky got in there first with a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. And the motion carried.
All right. Last, the ARB needs to determine how long each member of the public will be able to speak during public comment periods. The public will be allowed to comment after each consent agenda items and after each action item as is standard ARB practice. I move that each member of the public will have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, there's a motion on the
I'll second it.
All right, a second from Mr. Burns. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. And the motion carries.
All right.
And I
Thank you.
pass the virtual gavel back to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Zellman. All right. Virtual meeting and WebEx information staff.
Yes, hi, this is Laura Arsenault. I'm going to be soon the former ARB administrator, but for tonight, if you have any questions, if you're listening in as an attendee, you'll be promoted when your turn is called for your case. If you have any questions or have concerns connecting, please type into the chat function or raise your hand, and we'll be happy to try to help you connect to the best of our ability. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Laura. And as is a tradition, we begin our ARB meetings with the reading of the statement of purpose and intent of historic overlay districts. And my newly appointed vice chairman, Mr. Zellman, has offered to do that.
Yes, historic overlay districts are created for the purpose of promoting the general welfare, education, economic prosperity, and recreational pleasure of the public through the perpetuation of those general areas of individual structures, those general areas or individual structures and premises that have been officially designated by the Board of Supervisors as having historical, cultural, architectural, or archaeological significance. Regulations within such districts are intended to protect against destruction of or encroachment upon such areas, structures, and premises, to encourage usage which will lead to their continuance, conservation, and improvement in a manner appropriate to the preservation of the cultural, social, economic, political, architectural, or archaeological heritage of the county, to prevent creation of environmental influences adverse to such purposes, and to assure that new structures and uses within such districts will be in keeping with the character to be preserved and enhanced.
All right, thank you. So the next thing on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. It is my understanding that there may be a motion to shift one of our items down to action items. Is that correct, Laura?
Yes, that's correct. There's been some changes to the Bank of America sign permit in Centerville, and so we'd like to move it to, we would recommend moving it to an action item for discussion.
All right, I would entertain a motion by any member to move the current consent calendar item down to the items for action.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Zellman.
I will move that what is currently item 1 on the consent calendar be moved to an action item on the agenda.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Kalinsky. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we move on to the introduction and recognition of guests. Laura, do we have any guests with us today?
It's hard to tell from the guest list if we have any guests, but that are not related to one of the action or workshop items. If we have any guests, you can use the raise your hand function or the chat function, and we'll just wait a minute to see. But from what I see, I think most people are here for one of the cases. So just wait 1 minute and see if anyone raises their hand or types in the chat. Okay. All right. Seeing none, I think we're all good to go.
All right. Well, now we will move on to our first action item, which is item ARB 21CTV01, proposal for refacing of signage at the Bank of America building. This is represented by Mr. Gary Brent from MG Permits. Is Mr. Brent with us?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Yes.
All right. If you have a presentation, Laura should be able to help you set it up if there's anything. Obviously, we've had files submitted to us. And if not, you can walk us through the materials. We usually allot about 8 minutes for presentations.
Sounds good. I'm not sure how to share my screen, so hopefully if you guys have the latest update for the sign drawing, I guess that would be my first question to the board. Do you guys have that, or should I? Laura, yes?
Yes, Mr. Brent. It was emailed out earlier today.
Okay, perfect. That sounds good. Well, then I'll just go quickly through it. It's relatively straightforward. The latest rendition of the refacing of the Bank of America signage. The original proposal was designed by a sign company that I believe had trouble and was not aware of the special exception that's the plan that's approved. So hence the revisions that came today, or maybe yesterday. So the first sign on the front wall is internally illuminated. Bank of America channel letter sign replacing the existing sign. Similarly sized, actually slightly smaller than what's existing. The re-imaging is simply a Bank of America rebranding. Their sign and logo has changed slightly, as you can tell. So again, that is a similar sign to what's being, which is existing. The next sign, again, very straightforward and simple. Side elevation, originally the sign was designed to be in the center of that west facade. Again, with the designer having no knowledge of there being a special exception plan approved. And hence the revision shows the signs move to the right elevation, which is in accordance with what the sign plan shows that Mr. Bruce Miller shared with us from ZIP. Again, the sign is relatively small, but in accordance with the special exception plan. And then, not to belabor this into the 8-minute category, the third sign is a reface of an existing monument sign, which that didn't change, Laura. So that was one of the original files that was submitted. Again, it's a panel replacement of the existing sign, monument sign. And I could try to share that, but I don't know how. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll pull it up real quick if they want to go ahead and start discussion. If you're done, Mr. Brent.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brent. That was definitely within the 8-minute window we were setting. So what I'll do, just like we've been doing in the past with this new digital format, is I will conduct using our roll call list, go around and ask everyone if they have any comments or questions. But before that, obviously, is there any member of the public that has a comment on this application? And thank you for pulling that up, Laura. Oh, hopefully we still have Laura.
Yeah, it looks like she might be having some trouble, but I'm here, so in case things go awry.
All right. Well, Nicole, do we have anyone? Do you have any way of knowing if we have a member of the public that has any comment on this?
Yeah, I can see if anybody's raising their hand. Also, I don't see anything at the moment.
Okay. I didn't anticipate that. So obviously going around the room, Miss Albury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no comments and I have no questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Burns.
I would approve the action item as presented.
All right. Mrs. Swan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do not have a comment as well.
Thank you. Mr. Kalinsky?
I think it's fine. Much more legible than before. Approved decision to rebrand it.
All right. Ms. Orr?
I don't have any further comments.
Thank you. Mr. Plumpy?
Sure. I do have one comment. With the sign being white as proposed, white background for the Bank of America, I was wondering how it's going to look at night, being maybe obnoxiously bright, too bright, as one drives by, and perhaps making the Walgreens sign read not well. I thought the previous sign was more successful. Not saying the previous sign is what it should be, but my concern is that the white background is a little too much. If perhaps there's a different color that could be muted, maybe a light blue background that the Bank of America sign could sit on, so it still reads. Just something that would tone down the white, especially at night. That's all.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, you may.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That's Mr. Brent. No, I was going to turn right to you to ask.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So everyone is aware, Fairfax County sign regulations do not allow for a white background to be illuminated. You're not allowed. The light ordinance prohibits white and yellow, the two colors that are prohibited from being illuminated. So that white will actually look like it does there in the daytime, but at night it will be black. You will only see the letters. So it's essentially going to be the same sort of reverse color background like the red, but it'll be only the letters that are illuminated at night.
Okay. I'd like to Mr. Daniels, do you mind if I respond?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. That makes me feel a bit better. I wish you would have had a exhibit that shows it at night, but you do not. I mean, in reality, it's going to read much better. I know about signage design, so I will withdraw my concern if that is the case.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Plumpy.
Yep.
Mr. Zellman.
I am good. No comments. Thank you.
All right, and that just leaves me, and I equally don't have any comments. I will point out that Laura has shared with us a revised motion that points out the requirements of the special exception and some of those conditions. So otherwise, I have no questions on the presentation, so I would entertain a motion from any of our members.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Zellman.
I would move that the ARB approve action item ARB-21-CTV-01, the proposal for refacing of signage for Bank of America building located at 13928 Lee Highway, tax map number 054-4, double paren 01, double paren 0057A, in the Centerville Historic Overlay District as submitted and presented at the January 14, 2021 ARB meeting, subject to the following conditions. 1, the applicant must ensure that the proposed signage meets all development conditions approved with special exemption SE 2005-SU-031, and 2, the applicant must ensure that sign permit approvals are obtained before any new signage is installed. Upon review of the materials, the proposal is found to meet requirements of zoning ordinance 7-200 historic overlay districts.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, seconded by Mr. Kalinsky. We have a motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Brent. Laura will be in touch with you with additional information.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Thanks so much.
All right, on to our remaining items. Our next item for action is ARB 20-LOR 05 Amendment Proposal for Architecture for Grocery Store Anchor Site. And my understanding is that most likely the presentation will also cover ARB 20-LOR 2 Amendment Proposal for Architecture Retail Building at the western side of the Laurel Hill Adaptive for Use area. This presentation is going to be made by?
Yeah, it's representatives from Elm Street and from Lidl. Mr. Perry, would you remind me who I need to promote to do the presentations? I apologize.
Sure, it'd be Frank Watkins is project architect.
All right, Mr. Burns, are you going to be able to stay with us or are you going to have to depart?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, for these next two action items, ARB 20-LOR-05 and 06, I will need to recuse myself.
All right. So recuse. We'll send someone out in the hall to get you.
Laura, also two representatives from Lidl are here. We have Nick and Tori from Lidl. You see those as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Perry, obviously the floor is yours. Since I just would remind everybody that we're going to be looking at two different items, but since they're going to be presented about relatively close together, we'll just have to keep in mind that this would be two separate motions for both the retail and the grocery anchor store.
Laura, could you,
Sure. Go ahead.
could you pull up the presentation, please?
Sure. Hold on one second. Do you want me to pull it up, or do you have someone presenting?
I was hoping you could do that.
I can do it. Hold on one second. Are we doing the Lidl first, Mr. Perry?
It's all one presentation.
Okay. Nicole, do you happen to have it on hand?
I do, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can you make me the, okay.
Great, thank you. Good evening. I'm Jim Perry with Elm Street Development. With me this evening are our architect, Frank Watkins, and representatives from Lidl. You may recall that the ARB approved revised architecture for a Lidl grocery store and companion retail building last summer for the retail portion of the Laurel Hill Adaptive Reuse Project. We then submitted that architecture to the Virginia Department of Historic Resources for their review. VDHR responded in September of last year that they would like for us to work with them to see if we could develop some alternative architecture that would be darker in color, more regular and symmetrical in the front elevation, and eliminate the faux wood panels elements that were included with that architecture. We then embarked on a collaborative process with VDHR to develop revised architecture that was subsequently approved by VDHR on December 4th of last year, and that same architecture was then approved by the National Park Service on December 18th. So we're here tonight to seek your approval of the architecture that has now been fully approved by both VDHR and the National Park Service. So next slide, please. Next slide. So just by way of orientation, I'm sure it's familiar to you by now. The Lidl store, grocery store anchor is the building on the right side of the image, and the companion retail building is the building on the left side of the image. Next slide. Next slide. So this is the architecture that was approved by the ARB in last summer. And you may recall that the final change we made to that architecture was to replace the white brick you see in the bottom image with the darker gray brick that's in the top image. Next slide. This just shows the rear elevation as well. Next slide. These are the side elevations, and you may recall that the south elevation, the top image, includes a relatively consistent height from front to back to screen the mechanical equipment on the roof. That's the end of the building where the large refrigeration unit is. The north elevation, on the other hand, the bottom image shows a parapet that slopes from tall to short, if you will, from front to back to minimize the building profile facing the main entrance off of Silverbrook Road. Next slide. This is the companion retail building. You can see the architecture, the materials, and the details are very similar to the Lidl store. This is the front elevation, and the next slide is the side and the rear. So those are the architecture that was approved by the ARB last summer and submitted to VDHR. Next slide, please. This is the new Lidl architecture that has now been approved by VDHR and the National Park Service. The front elevation, obviously the top image, and the rear elevation at the bottom. And you can see that it provides the darker masonry material, the increased bay rhythm and symmetry, and eliminates the wood panels as requested by VDHR. And while it's clearly different from what this body approved previously, I just want to take a moment and point out what has not changed. The architecture is still clearly distinguishable from the historic structures. The building height and scale is unchanged and is appropriate in the historic context. The front elevation remains primarily brick. The strong rhythm of bays is retained and enhanced. The amount of transparency is essentially unchanged, but has been reorganized to increase the symmetry. The front canopy detail is also unchanged. It's very similar to the canopy detail introduced in the front of the historic subblock buildings. And the rear elevation is unchanged except for the color and the introduction of a masonry material at the base. Next slide. These are the two side elevations, and you'll see that they're also organized the same. The image at the bottom is the south elevation, which remains at full height to hide the mechanical equipment, while the sloping parapet is retained at the north elevation, facing the main entrance. The changes include the darker masonry material, addition of the masonry base on the north side, and elimination of the wood panels. Next slide, please. This is the companion retail building, revised architecture, which, as you can see, continues to incorporate many of the same elements as the Lidl store. The current design is very similar to what was previously approved, except for the brick selection, the elimination of the faux wood material, and slight modifications to the parapet profiles. Next slide. This is shows the side and rear elevations, which are unchanged except for the darker brick and replacing the wood panels with metal panels. Next slide. So the next series of slides are images that you've seen before. These are the 3D model that we created. So I'm going to show you the same images you've seen previously. We just dropped in the new architecture. So next slide. This is the companion retail building looking kind of northwest. Next. Same building looking the other direction. Next. This is the front of the Lidl grocery store. Next, please. Another shot of that. Next. That's looking from the entrance road coming in off of Silverbrook Road. You see the Lidl building in relation to the wall of the tower. Next. That's an image coming in off of Silverbrook Road as you turn into the site. You can see that basically the size of the buildings, the massive scale of the buildings is unchanged and are largely hidden by the wall of the prison. Next slide. That's just a little further back. Next slide. This shows that the sloping parapet wall actually does eliminate most of the view of the Lidl store as you look from Silverbrook Road. Next slide. That's the same image you've seen before. As the grade of the road decreases down, you go down the hill, you see less and less of what's happening inside, and your view is dominated by the tower and the wall. And then that's the final image on the interior, and that's the high south elevation that, as you can see, is screening the mechanical equipment. Next slide. These are sections, again, that you've seen before. Just step through those briefly. Next slide. Again, the size and the height and the scale of the buildings are unchanged, just that the architecture that has been revised. Next slide. And one more, I think. There we go. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Perry. Laura and Nicole, do we have any members of the public that have any questions or comments? Excuse me, not questions, comments.
I don't see any as of this time, but I will let you know if that changes.
All right, say again, Laura.
I'll let you know if that changes. I don't see any.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Perry. Always quick and efficient to the point. Miss Aubrey.
Thank you for the presentation. I have no comments or further questions. Thank you.
All right, Miss Wan.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation and thank you for the revision. I do have a question, not comments. There's a brick. The brick was selected with the name that is a iron spot. Is that just a name, or it got iron pigment in the brick?
Can you slide back or move back to that slide, please? Okay. That would be one of the slide maybe 5 or 6.
5 or 6.
So Ms. Wan, the question was, is the name of the material just iron spark, or is there actual iron in the brick material?
Right.
No, I'm sorry. If you could go to slide 7, please. Yeah, keep going. So the proposed mason brick is shown at the top on the left. It's a Gary brick, flash Camelot ink iron spot. I think that's just the name of the brick.
It's just okay. It's just a question. I have no further comments. Thank you.
For this one, Mr. Kalinsky.
All right, thank you, Mr. Perry. I preferred what we had already approved, but I have no objection to this. That's all.
All right, Ms. Orr.
Sorry, no further comments.
All right, Mr. Plumpy.
No further comments as well. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Zellman.
No further comments.
All right, that leaves it to me. I would wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Kalinsky that I think I liked what we had before a lot more. I think in particular with Lidl and the unique design of their buildings, the design that was there before really spoke more to the brand and but also seemed to be a compromise. But this seems to be a back and forth on colors and materials, not on massing and size and everything. I think you guys have done a fantastic job trying to hide the massing and shape of this building within the current location. I think that we've all been pretty much in agreement that that's been working really well. And so now we're merely just in a conversation about which do we like, lighter or darker. And at this point, the design right here is still very good. I think I like the lighter one a little better if you had me pick, but that's why my wife picks the colors in the house. So with that, I don't have any other comments as well. So I would entertain a motion. It's possible someone could try to combine both motions, or I don't know if that's helpful for you, Laura, or if it would be better if they were two independent motions.
It helps if there's no comments on them. That I think that would be fine, but it just helps. I'll separate them in the letter so they have two separate letters.
All right, well, then I would entertain two separate motions to help Laura's sanity.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Zellman. Welcome to my seat that I normally have.
No problem. Mr. Chairman, I'd move that the ARB approve ARB 20-LOR-05 amendment located in the Laurel Hill Adaptive Reuse Area, tax map number 107-1-09 for the proposed revised architecture for grocery store anchor site is submitted and presented at the January 14, 2021 ARB meeting. Upon review of the materials, the proposal is found to meet requirements of zoning ordinance 7-200 historic overlay.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Kalinsky. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Hearing none, the motion passes. I would entertain a second motion for the retail.
I'd be glad to make that motion, Mr. Daniel.
Yes, Mr. Kalinsky.
All right, I'd like to propose a motion for ARB 20-LOR-06, proposal for architecture for retail building on western side of penitentiary area. Oh, I move ARB approve ARB 20-LOR-06 amendment located in the Laurel Hill Adaptive Reuse Area. Tax map numbers 107-1-09 for the proposed architecture for retail building on western side of penitentiary area, as submitted and presented at the January 14, 2021 ARB meeting. Upon review of the materials, the proposal is found to meet the requirements of zoning ordinance 7-200 historic overlay districts.
Thank you, Mr. Kalinsky. Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by Mr. Plumpy. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Perry, Mr. Watkins, and all the rest of the folks at Lidl. Laura will get back to you, and we look forward to seeing those buildings up in the near future.
Yeah, I just want to say, Mr. Daniels, congratulations on being elevated to chairman of the ARB. I've been working on this project long enough to remember when you joined the ARB and started working on this project. So it's great to see you in the chairman's seat. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
I don't know who I don't know how that makes you feel old and wow. Okay, time. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. That is all for our action items. We need to summon Mr. Burns from the hallway.
And also for the record, Mr. McReynolds has joined the meeting.
Excellent. Good to have you here, Mr. McReynolds.
And for the record, Mr. Burns lives in a mid-century modern house. I don't think they have any hallways.
Sorry for being late. I thought that somehow this meeting started at 7. So
that's all right. We're glad to have you here. All right. I'm going to message John, see if he's checking that.
I'm back.
Oh, there we go. Welcome back, Mr. Burns. We're now moving on to our workshop items, which brings us to item number 4, ARB 05 LFK 02, amendment, proposal for landscaping to single-family residential dwelling at 1000 Doug Hill Lane. This is represented by Mr. J. Graham and Ms. Anatova in the Drainesville district. Mr. Graham or Ms. Anatova, are either of you here?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you for having us. I don't think Jay Graham is present, so I will be presenting. I'm the landscape architect with Woody Graham, who has been working on the project. And I just wanted to take a minute and thank Laura for all her help in leading me through the process and helping me with coming up with the presentation. And I just wanted to make sure, am I presenting or Laura, you prefer to present?
Mila, it's your choice. You can present and toggle through if you want to try to share your screen. I gave you sharing privileges. If not, we can present for you.
Okay, I will present. Let me just pull up the PDF. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yep. Wonderful. So the property, as you mentioned, is 1000 Doggy Hill Lane. It's located in Langley Fork Historic Overlay District, as shown on this map. It's the property highlighted in orange. This is just showing the existing site survey. There are a lot of existing trees on the site. There is some topography change. This is the existing property that was constructed in 1996 and renovated in 2005. And the architects who we have been working with, Widman Architects, have already presented to you the Solarium, which is an addition in this backyard approximately located here. And you've seen the presentation as a workshop item in July of 2020, and it was presented again with all revisions and modifications in September of 2020. This is the actual tree survey with all the trees identified on the property. This is an aerial view, again, showing the property. This is Georgetown Pike, and this is the location of the property here. These are some existing images showing the front of the house. This is the back, which is where we're focusing our work at the moment, the existing house. This is an existing back stone paved patio. These are some more views. This can kind of start showing the topography change. I wanted to point out this as a significant tree because it's we have considered our design in such a way that we are acknowledging the intensive root system of this tulip poplar located on the property, and it's kind of on a higher point and the grade slopes down away from it. And here you can kind of see this stone patio that is adjacent to the building, and there are stone walls that are enveloping the patio, so to say. I can show that better here. So this is a stone wall here. This is the stone patio. This is the existing structure, and this is the proposed solarium here. And this is the tulip poplar I was pointing out in that picture. And with this, I will move down to the next image, which is showing our proposed site plan. And again, this is the existing building. This here is the solarium, existing wall, and the backyard is higher than this driveway here. The solarium is in close proximity to the tulip poplar, which this is approximately the canopy, and therefore the critical root zone extends to about here, which was taken in consideration when we revised or when we worked on incorporating the proposed solarium into the back garden. And the way we solved or acknowledged the existing grades and existing tree root zones was by incorporating this and these retaining walls, which are very short retaining walls, but kind of keep the grade on the higher end of the yard, create the leveled surface for the solarium, envelope it in a kind of hug, if you will, but the walls are softened by a proposed planting that creates different views from inside the solarium. Another thing we've done with this proposed plan is we've broken up the large stone paving here in the back of the property by inserting planting areas like this one, this one, to minimize the paved surfaces and bring the garden into the property or into the back garden. We've also created a very strong axial relationship here with these stairs that are leading your eye up to a higher landing point with a nice fountain kind of framing your view and creating an interest with light and shadow play in the sunlight. The stairs are framed by 2 rows of trees on each side. And there is another staircase leading back to the solarium from this elevated portion. And this is showing the view from sitting out here, a view going up with the fountain in the background, these long stairs. And this view is showing you will probably notice the stairs in the plan are kind of curving a little bit and opening even more. This is a view that was created before, and we modified a little bit the design by opening up the stairs at the base. Just wanted to point that out. But this is this planted area that is starts to break up the paved stone terrace surface. This is another view from the side showing this stone paved terrace with the long steps going up to the fountain in the background. And this is the solarium here. So it's kind of creating different tools within the garden. These are some elevations that you have seen before, but just wanted to remind you, this is the front of the house, this is the solarium, the connection to the existing structure. This is the grade change I was trying to describe before with a existing wall here. This is another elevation showing this area again and how the back garden is elevated up. This is just a view of the solarium. And another view looking towards the main house. This is the west elevation. These are some of the sections showing. So I'm sorry if I make you dizzy, but I'm going to quickly go back to the plan to show you where the sections are taken from. So we're going to see first this section here, AA, and I'm going to show you the BB section. And then we're going to see the CC section. So close your eyes to not get dizzy. So here we are. So this is the AA section. It's showing this retaining wall and the leveled surface at the solarium. So this is coding the grade up here because we have this large tulip poplar root zone that we're trying to keep and prevent from being. But it allows us to soften the wall by adding plants in front of it. And it's creating this leveled surface where we would have trench drain to accept the rainwater and make sure that we're not causing any runoff problems. This is the longer section BB, so this is the connection to the existing home behind, and this is the property line with this tulip poplar in the background, kind of a diagram of the potential root zones and how we're addressing the impact of it. Again, solarium with a little bit of leveled surface and then connecting to the existing slope. And this is the last section, section CC, showing a short retaining wall here, opportunity for creating a second pass up on the higher end of the grade. And we also have these stone paving bands, which are kind of like ribbons in the landscape that frame the planting and create a clear line between lawn and planting. And just at the end to show you some of the material palette, this is the stone, the proposed stone veneer for the wall, basically to match the existing stone on the building. Blue stone paving to, again, match the blues and the browns in that existing stone. This is the ribbon, present image of that ribbon that I was trying to explain, which creates this clean line between the lawn surface and the plants behind. We will not have the gravel, but I just couldn't find a better image to represent that. And then this is a present image showing the lawn steps with a blue stone riser and lawn as a thread, and kind of leading you up the slope towards the fountain. And these are some present images for the fountain. We're mainly looking into nice texture and just a little bit of trickling of water down, nothing too fancy, too noisy, very settled in, but this the different ins and outs of the stone, if you will, start creating this play of light and shadow, and will create a little bit of the water sound that is that provides additional healing when you're in the garden. And with this, I will, sorry, I forgot about the planting palette. We basically have a combination of lawn, evergreen plants that create structure in the winter months, but also provide protection habitat for birds and other wildlife. We are introducing new trees. We're very cautious about all the existing trees. We are working closely with an arborist who have evaluated all the conditions of the existing trees, and we're trying to keep the ones that are in good condition. We're transplanting a few, and we are adding the we're layering the garden. So we have the canopy, we have the shrub layer, we have the herbaceous perennials and grasses layer, bulbs and accent planting for some color. And as I mentioned, the lawn for just experiencing the garden in a different way. And with this, I will open it to questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Antova. As we do before, there are no public comments on workshop items. So we'll go through the roll call order again. Ms. Aubrey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I was looking through the proposal before the meeting, I was impressed with all of the items being proposed, and my reaction was, this will be a beautiful garden. But as I was listening to the proposal presentation, it made me wonder, what is the actual area, the size of this garden? And are there lots? It seems like there's an awful lot of proposals being put forward for possibly the size, but I don't know. What is the actual size of the area of land to be proposed for landscaping?
I am not sure in terms of footage, if that's the question, but I can show you on the plan if that would help. So this is the proposed solarium. This is an existing wall. And so our scope of work for this portion of the garden begins after or inside the wall here. This is the property line adjacent to the next property to the east. So we're hugging that property line, going to the property line on the north. And then this client actually owns the neighboring property as well. However, for this particular area, we are not going into that secondary property. We're basically kind of staying within these lines. And then this is an existing wall here. So if you, I think I would say the existing wall is to remain. We're gonna do some planting enhancements beyond, but you can kind of say that this is our boundary here. And then this little portion of the garden to the west. We're not doing anything at the moment in the front or, as I mentioned, on this neighboring property. So this is really focused on the back terrace and the area around the solarium.
Thank you. I think, I would kind of rely on our landscape architect, Mr. Plumpy, to, I'll be interested to hear his comments on whether he thinks all of the proposals can be fit into this area. And but as I said, it looks like it will be a beautiful garden, assuming that it all fits in there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Aubrey. Don't worry, Joe, we'll get you your chance. Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I would echo Ms. Aubrey's comment, and I notice if you can go to drawing 4 of 22 in your presentation, and then kind of zoom in on the adjacent lot, there's dashed lines that seems to incorporate portions of what's labeled as lot 11 into the landscape. And are you telling us tonight that that's not part of what you're proposing? Those walkways, the existing stone patio and swimming pool and things of that sort?
Correct. We are not, this is not part of this proposal.
Okay, so you're just going to connect to those existing features, but not make any landscape changes beyond the extent of the west side of lot 4A?
Correct, yes.
Okay, okay. Okay. The only other comment I would have, and this is a design question more than a question that would have any impact of this landscape proposal on the historic district, and that is it's very intense, particularly in the area inside the L of the solarium and the main house. It's a lot of stuff going on in there. But that would be my only comment, and I think that's more a personal question for the designers and the client to settle. I am grateful that you're trying to keep that tulip poplar.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Burns. Ms. Wan?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any comments. This is a very nice space, going to be very, very nice.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kolinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Very, very rich quality materials to this proposal, and I like that. I think it fits well within the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. McReynolds.
I had just one question, and that question is related to why is this area considered to be historic?
This area falls within the historic overlay district. So the backyard space itself and the building itself, I do not believe are considered heritage resources, but the property falls within the boundaries of the historic overlay district. Thus, it has to come to us when it has an application.
Okay. I thought that
Am I correct there, Laura, or?
Yeah, I was going to say, the Solarium, when it was reviewed in September, I think it was before you were on, Mr. McReynolds, but yeah, it's not with the view shed of any of the historic properties within the district, so that's another thing that we take into account.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, anyway, I think that the proposal is beautiful and will be a nice enhancement to the house and good benefit to the economy too, and seems to be fitting with and fits within the, will be a benefit to the site of within sight of the historic buildings. So I think it's a great enhancement, and I wish the owner well with it.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Orr.
It does look beautiful and quite intense. My only concern is that fountain. It seemed to block. In that one picture you have of it, it's like this big block blocking the view to that poplar. But that is not a historic district comment, so it is what it is. But it looks really nice otherwise.
All right, thank you, Ms. Orr, and Mr. Plumpy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Well, first of all, I think I would like to say a very nice presentation. I think the design flow is very good, matches the architecture of the house, kind of an English formal garden up against the house, and then it transforms into English countryside, and that kind of illusionary type thing amongst the woods. Again, design preferences. I mean, I agree with everyone's comments and so forth. The fountain itself, I think I'd be very concerned about the root impact of that fountain basin with the existing poplar tree, which is right behind it, I think. Is that correct? Between 4 and 5 is the poplar?
This here is the tulip poplar. This is the, do you see my cursor?
I do not see your cursor. Okay, all right. I'm sorry, way back there. Okay, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not an issue. And I think the tulip poplar itself is probably a good 75, 80 feet tall plus if it's a mature poplar. So I don't think that's going to be a big issue of doing. I think it's really your thought with the fountain is to foreshorten the views. So it's kind of one of those illusions. Hey, you have a nice area up against the house, but then the view goes beyond. So and the key thing is the main element to all this is the solarium, which is elevated, which will have the panoramic views of everything from down below and so forth. One thing that would be interesting though is versus the view blocking the tree is from the solarium, you'll see the edge of the fountain. And maybe that's not the most thing, but it'd be very interesting again, we're all designers here, so just my thought would be is perhaps the fountain could be a little bit more interesting from the view from the solarium, as opposed to you really can't see it, but maybe you don't want to see it. But I was going to say you'll see it as you enter the solarium, and then it disappears as you go farther out. And maybe that's a good thing. So it's a kind of a sneak and peek type design. But my only really comment regarding pretty much everything, knowing that this is the area that is out in the country of Fairfax County, let's call it that. I would strongly recommend, just as typical, I know Jay Graham very well. I've known him for the past 40 years since I've been out in this, 35 years since I've been here in the DC metro area. In fact, I interviewed with him. He hired me, but I did not take his offer way back when he was at RTKL Architects in Baltimore. But nice guy, I know him very well. So I know that I feel very confident the design will be nicely done. He has good design taste in his employees too as well. I would like to say that just be careful about here with deer resistant plant material. Use that. Nothing's deer proof, but I'm sure there's deer in the area unless it's a 6-foot fence around the whole yard itself. But also try to avoid, as you know, invasive plant material, because we're trying to protect that as much as you can. That's could be a little hard thing to do. It's not required, but just one of those things. Native or adapted plant material is preferred, but I know some things will not be native, and that's okay with me too as well. I'm sure they'll have a garden around here. It's going to be well maintained, so it's not going to go crazy. I think it's a nice design, and I welcome this into Fairfax County. It's nice to see good design work like this happening in our jurisdiction. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. I appreciate your feedback.
All right, thank you, Joe. Mr. Zellman.
I do not have anything unique to add. Thanks.
All right. Well, I'll close it up. Obviously, I think you've gotten a lot of really good feedback on landscape design and obviously where this is located in the HOD and their prior comments on this property and the construction work going on in the house itself. I don't think there's a lot of concerns there. You've gotten a lot of good feedback on the landscape and its overall scale. I guess one question I might have is there the need for an archaeological study to be done? Because there's a lot of ground being turned up here. And so that would really draw my attention more for the HOD than the built environment.
Chris, this is Laura. I was just looking up when Miss Aubrey was speaking. And I noted from the previous submission for the solarium that there was little potential for archaeology on site, but I have reached out to the archaeologist again to ask for further comments before next month.
I would think in light of when looking at the project before, I didn't necessarily see that, but with the amount of work going on in the backyard, I feel like at least a question should be asked. Beyond that, obviously this is a workshop item. When you do come back for a full application, obviously you'll need to make sure you meet our submission requirements regarding design materials, all the appropriate scale and sizes and plans and everything needed for site plan stuff to make sure that it meets all those requirements. Laura, and actually now I guess Nicole, will work a lot with you to make sure that that package meets everything that's appropriate so that an approval can be given when you come back.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes, Mr. Burns.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. A question I forgot to ask, and I'm sure it's one that Susan Motkins would have asked if she were here. Tell us about lighting of these features.
There will be just a very low amount of lighting for safety purposes, but nothing crazy. There will be some tree uplights to highlight, for example, the main staircase that is the lawn stairs that I showed framed by the trees. I can see some tree uplights there. There will be lighting at the fountain, and there will be no lighting back in here because there's no need for it. There might be some lighting, maybe if we want to highlight somehow the tulip poplar or a downlight from it, but I don't think so because I don't see a need of lighting back there. Otherwise, I'm sure there will be some sconce lights at the house facade and there will be some lighting around the solarium. But it's going to be gentle lighting, nothing too bright.
Oh, thank you. Sorry,
Okay. If I may add, could you please include in your presentation for action when you come back to the ARB information on what lighting that you are proposing? Thank you.
Definitely. Thank
Mr.
you.
Daniels, I'd like to add to Mr. Burns' comment, please.
Yes, please, Mr. Palmer, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. If you could also, don't just say what you just said there. Be more specific of the type of light fixture, type of light element, LED, incandescent, some Kelvin level, the color of the light, those kind of things. And it'd be interesting if you had a diagram that showed a night aspect of it from a plan view standpoint, so where the glow of light is, like pools of lighting where that is. I did have, just to add to this, and one comment came to mind is, it'd be interesting if you could also present a construction mobilization plan. How do they actually plan to bring stuff to the backyard? Will it compromise any other parts of the site? You're kind of somewhat landlocked. It'd be interesting to see. I'm assuming you're going to come from the, I'm not going to assume anything. I guess you come from the driveway, which is to the right, and then go down. But it'd be interesting to see how you do this and what kind of tree protection measures you have, which will have to do anyways for construction of this, a set of measures, control plans, and so forth. But it'd be just interesting to bring a civil drawing with proposed grading and so forth that is more detailed than what you propose, and the construction sequencing, not so much the sequencing, but how it is acted for construction and protective measures. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Plumby. Ms. Anatoba, did you have anything to add, a response or any comments?
I just want to make sure I got everything that was provided as feedback. So with the lighting, you just want a more specific lighting plan with potentially lighting cut sheets.
Yes, that is what we typically expect for anything in which there's lighting that's going to be installed, is some type of cut sheet information about what the types of fixtures are going to be, temperature and things like that, particularly because of the HOD that this is in Drainsville, and everyone's described as a rather rural district. We definitely, while we believe that that's going to be gentle lighting you're proposing, we also don't want to create a beacon in the woods. That definitely would not be in keeping with the existing guidelines for Drainsville. And really, it's obviously whatever is going to be going forward with the full application, and any building permit is going to be what the ARB package should be, so that when we put our approval on it, it matches up when it goes for all the other approval processes. Laura, do you have anything you wanted to add on that?
No, Nicole and I will work with Ms. Antoba on the submission, and I've already reached out to archaeology, so we should have an answer by February.
All right, is that, and I guess the anticipation is we would see you back next time with a full application for review and consideration, correct?
Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your feedback.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Anatoba.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes our action items and workshop items. And now that brings us on to board and staff items. No presentations. Oh, amazing. And being part of that Reston task force, it's always presentations nonstop. All right, well, going through those items, review and action on the approval of previous month's minutes. Laura transmitted those in the package. Laura, I had no comments. Did you get any comments from anyone else prior to this?
Yes, Ms. Opry had 2 comments, and I have not been able to incorporate those, but I will note them and include them if any other comments come in.
All right, were there any other comments from members? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion that would comment on that and potentially pay our recording secretary as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I move that we approve the minutes from the December 2020 meeting of the ARB with the editorial changes that Ms. Aubrey provided to Ms. Arsenault, and that concurrently we approve payment to the recording secretary.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, seconded by Mr. Kalinsky. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. All right. Treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. I've started to include the treasurer's the balance on the agenda so everyone can see it relatively easily, and included the spreadsheets in the share file link so you can see what the costs were as well. That's just administrative, but the balance was $20,573 as of the 1st of this month.
All right, thank you. Seeing no administrative items on the list, moving on to discussions and updates and reports. Home Runs Acres HOD.
Trying to get my camera going.
You might get kicked
Anyway.
off if you get your camera going.
That's probably true. I probably shouldn't have turned it on. Yeah, so we have our next meeting in just less than 2 weeks. It is going to be January 27th, also a Wednesday. Oh, can you guys still hear me?
We can.
Okay, good, because everything is frozen. So I'll just keep talking until it cuts out. We've got, I think I mentioned last time, we've got our design guideline contractor on board, Traceries. They're going to be joining us meeting, kind of do the kickoff and to start discussing the design guidelines with them. And we're still kind of looking at contributing and non-contributing. And then after that meeting, we may need one more with the work group before we kind of go into hibernation and start kind of writing and parsing out all the details. But we're moving right along.
All right, thank you, Nicole. I'm looking forward to hearing about that one as it proceeds. Hearing no other discussion from other members, let's move on to Holland Hills.
So the Holland Hills HOD, as Nicole said for Homes Run, we're coming out of hibernation. We are having a community meeting on Monday, January 25th at 6:30 p.m. And we will be discussing, I'm calling them the findings, so staff findings, including the HOD boundaries, the zoning ordinance amendment text, the comprehensive plan amendment text, and most importantly, the design guidelines. All that information is already up on the website for community review, and we're now completing outreach for that meeting. And everyone is free to attend. You do not need to register. You can just go ahead, and it will be a WebEx meeting, but that's on Monday, January 25th.
Laura, can you share that information with all of us?
Sure. I'll send it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know many of the folks who have been participating already have it, but that sounds like a rather interesting meeting to attend with all those findings coming out. So it would be rather helpful to come up to speed, particularly because this will be coming at this board sooner than later, eventually.
Correct. Yep. I will send out a reminder meeting for that.
All right. On to our next HOD, Wellington River Farm.
So this one is coming down the pike much more faster than our other two. We're now calling it Wellington at River Farm. It's no longer just River Farm, as that is a little bit bigger of a property and a little bit of a misnomer. So it will be Wellington at River Farm Historic Overlay District as of today. Tomorrow, that could change. But we're working on drafting our findings, the staff report, doing boundaries, contributing, non-contributing properties, the period of significance, the zoning ordinance amendment, and the comp plan amendment. We are planning to have a community meeting for that one at the end of February. I'll send out a joint reminder with the Holland Hills one, but this one will be February 22nd, which is also a Monday at 6:30 p.m. And that will be our only community meeting for that one. We're hoping to come to the ARB for the review of guidelines in, I think it's going to be March. I don't think we're going to make it by February, but we'll be March and then presenting some of those findings as well. But you're free to come to the community meeting for that one. That one, the Planning Commission and board hearing dates have already been set. The Planning Commission date will be March 17th, and the Board of Supervisors hearing date will be April 13th. So Nicole and I and others on staff are working very diligently to finish up that staff report as soon as possible and getting it to review internally.
All right. Thanks, Laura. I probably want to hear from you soon about what that's going to require from us, since this will be a nice dry run for Holland Hills. Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I had a question for Laura on the Wellington at River Farms. Does that imply that the boundaries will be enlarged? Like most of our historic overlay districts have a radius around the core properties as a means of protecting the view sheds and such. Are they changing? Because I had thought that this one was solely the property and nothing else.
That's correct. So part of the name comes from the board's motion called it River Farm. So Wellington at River Farm notes that it was on George Washington's River Farm. But yes, we are only doing, I think it's the 24 acres that are the existing American Horticultural Society. We're not doing a buffer boundary like in the other historic overlay districts.
Is the county contemplating negotiating some sort of an easement with the adjacent property owners that would protect the view sheds?
As of this time, no.
Okay, thank you.
Did you mention that there's 2 easements on the property already?
No, go ahead, Nicole, if you'd like.
Yeah, so there's 2 easements. One is obviously is it George Memorial Parkway, so on the western side of the property, and then there's another one that actually is on the eastern side towards the Potomac. It doesn't encompass any of the structures, but it does have is it a conservation easement for the one on the Potomac, Laura?
Yeah, so the one on the Potomac is owned by Virginia Outdoors Foundation. It is a conservation easement and viewshed easement to protect the Potomac River viewshed.
So, but there's nothing so far on the 2 north and south borders.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Christopher?
Oh, yes. Sorry, Michelle, I didn't see on my screen there. There you are.
No. The other night, I attended a virtual meeting where Supervisor Stork was present, and he announced to the group who was listening that there was a proposal put forward by Nova Parks and the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust. They submitted a proposal on January 4th to the American Horticultural Society. And he did not say what the proposal was for, but presumably it was for acquiring the property. There's been no response yet from the American Horticultural Society, but just to let people know that apparently there has been at least one proposal, and it was written up in the local newspaper, for acquiring the land.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. That's the latest I have too. I don't know any more than that. But that's I have my fingers and toes crossed for that one.
All right, on to other future districts, potentially Gum Springs.
Right. Wishful, so Denise Dressel is working on the Gum Springs area right now. The most current update on that is there's 2 kind of efforts in right now. Denise secured a grant with the state, partly through the state and partly funded through the county, of a Pride of Fairfax National Register nomination, and they've moved forward with that. That's in the Gum Springs community. And so they're currently doing that. And then there was a second funding amount provided by Supervisor Stork to do additional survey work in Gum Springs and research. And so Denise is working on getting that survey information, scope of work, and getting a contractor for that, or consultant for that. I don't know if Denise is on. I saw a phone attendee, but I'm not sure if it's her specifically. But yes, that is the update I have at this point.
All right. Looking forward for more on that one. Reston Survey, obviously, a little over a week ago was the public meeting on the 5th. It was a rather calm, relaxing Tuesday before Wednesday. And I thought it was fairly well attended. I think a bunch of the folks from here, I know Mr. Burns was there and myself, and I think there were a few others. I thought the meeting was rather well attended. There was a lot of good discussion. I know several of us also provided comments, including former board members. Jason Suppin also gave comments over to folks. And I'll also point out that the most positive thing I think I took out of this whole thing was that Supervisor Alcorn mentioned that this is something that they are going to take in mind with the comprehensive plan update. That when we first met with him, he did not feel like this initiative was going to line up with the sequencing of the comp plan update, and now it definitely has. And so in my task force meeting this Monday, we actually talked about how that is something that needs to be, the task force wants to be briefed on. They are very excited to hear about, and there was a lot of interesting questions and concerns about it. So, and I say concerns in a positive way, meaning this was really interesting information that was shared. And overall, I thought it went well. The biggest criticism I had is the contractor VHR hired loved to basically say if it wasn't 50 years old, it isn't significant. And I really feel like they were rather draconian in holding on to that rule. It's not a rule, it's just a guideline. And considering some of the buildings in Reston are already in jeopardy and are already unique, it seems a little weird to me to hold so strictly to that. But that was my observation, Laura, if you had anything more to share, and obviously the rest of the members too.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Burns.
I share your concerns that the whole idea of looking at Reston is that it's recent history. And to impose the 50-year rule is a bit arbitrary. By the way, be that as it may, I do think that the scope of this survey is a material weakness of the survey, and that is it is limited to residential with a handful of other individual small properties. It pretty much ignores depreciable is commercial properties and county governmental properties. And so at the moment, those are the most threatened parts of Reston. And that would be essentially the industrial corridor. So it's a good thing, it's a good start, but it doesn't take a close look at the most threatened buildings in Reston. And that's the material weakness that I see in the overall survey. It's unfortunate, but I think it's a good start. And people are paying attention, and I'm hoping that it will grow into something broader and more inclusive of all the architectural types in the community.
It definitely also revealed a lack of understanding of what historic property is, what eligibility means, and that there's a difference between, obviously, the National Register and county recognition, and then an HOD recognition, which is something that I think much of the general public would struggle with to begin with. And I was kind of surprised at how VDHR handled it, because I figured they'd be a little more depth at handling that kind of question from folks. But thus is life there. I will also point out, I felt a little remorse after seeing about the gas station, because we so willingly went through that onto the fireplace. And I've had a strong change of heart on that structure, and that I think we were a little hasty in our previous determinations to knock it over. But John, you talking about more comprehensive, your comment at the meeting made me suggest to them that perhaps Reston could be considered a TCP because it has those guiding principles and the practice of the community there. So I threw that suggestion back at VDHR just to see what they might say. A TCP is a traditional cultural property, for those that don't know, and most folks associate them with Native American tribes, but they can actually be for any group that has a community practice or tradition. And if Reston's anything, it's a community of a particular live, work, play practice. But I don't know if anyone else was able to make it or had any other observations to add about it.
I think Samantha was there, right?
Yeah, Samantha, I think you looked like you were trying to unmute yourself. I can't tell.
I was there. I enjoyed the presentation a lot. And particularly when I saw 2 golf courses was putting inside. I think it's a good move, and I'm happy to see it happen. just like I say, the Reston is master planning and the landscape should involve, and I think a golf course might be the first step to get that part included.
All right. No, I think there were quite a few members on the Reston task force that would have been eager to make the golf course recognized as something significant, because that definitely is something the task force members also value. All right, hearing no more on that one, current DPD cases and Section 106 cases.
Chris, just one more note on that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
No, that's okay. So Denise is our kind of project manager on the Reston Survey. So please, direct any comments to myself, Nicole, or Denise. But we're kind of trying to figure out what that survey. I'm sure you'll be hearing about it in the future, because now that we have this survey, what are the next steps? So all these things are great comments on that, and I appreciate that, and I will pass them on to Denise. But if you have anything else, please feel free. This project, while the survey might be over, is by no means over in Reston.
When will the final version of it be provided to us after they've gotten all the comments?
That's a great question. I don't have the answer. Nicole, do you happen to know? I just don't know off the top of my head.
No, I don't know.
Okay, we'll follow up with Denise.
Okay, thanks, Laura. All right, DPD cases and Section 106 cases. I'll just throw this out there, Laura. We should all anticipate the SM1 reactor MOA being amended, because the Corps of Engineers has been unable to meet the timeframes that they've set for themselves. So I would be prepared to be notified that they plan to extend some of their timeframes on that. I know we consulted on that and talked about the reactor there and some of the products they would produce. One would only be surprised to hear that dismantling a reactor might take more time than anticipated.
What's the half-life of it? It's only 25 years or something like that they had to wait from the 80s or whatnot when it was shut down. But
exactly. That's the only 106 update I knew about.
No, that's fine. It's actually been relatively quiet over the holidays, so that's kind of good news for us. I do have a couple updates. So I think I brought this up last time. One of the zoning cases we're looking at is the Madeira School up in the Great Falls area. If you know, it's an all-girls private school, and they're looking to demolish some of the buildings on site. And it's not an inventory of historic sites or district, but we're trying to get them to document some of the buildings that they're taking down and trying to encourage them to nominate themselves as an inventory of historic site, because we think it has large ties to the community and along Georgetown Pike, if you're familiar with that property up in McLean. But it definitely has a long community history, and we're trying to get them in on that. So if you hear anything about the Madeira School and development review, we have done some reviewing comments on that. Turner Farm, if you're familiar with that, is currently coming in. It's up in the Drainsville area, I think, Nicole. I'm not 100%, but they're coming in for the resident curator property and doing an exception special exception use to make that property sustainable. So, and I'm not sure, Nicole, if you have any more details on it. I probably should have asked Denise for an update on that, but it's just brand new. So probably have more details for you next month.
Mr. Burns.
Yes, in terms of things that are going on, is there any movement on the One University Plaza project that is potentially threatening the Fairfax County Housing Authority's building?
I haven't heard anything on it, but I will check and get back to you. I'll make a note to follow up on that.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. And then the last thing I have is there's a 2232 application, which is a telecom review in not the historic overlay district, but if you're familiar of the intersection of New Braddock Road and 28, they're proposing a new bell tower there. That's going to be a telecommunications facility at the church on the corner, right across from the movie theater, if you're familiar with that in Sully District. But it's going to be 80 feet tall, so it's going to be a very, very tall bell tower, and staff is reviewing it with impacts on some inventory sites nearby, but it's just an interesting case because it's a telecommunications thing that's a bell tower. So it just seems very, very large for the area. So we'll have more comments on that when we're through with the review.
All right. Thank you, Laura. Any other updates or reports? Otherwise, on to correspondence and announcements.
So the announcement that I have, and you already know this, is just wanted to congratulate Nicole. She's our new ARB administrator, and we're very excited. She will be starting next month's meeting, so we'll be transferring over the next month. So if you have any things to send us, just send it to both Nicole and myself, and she will be taking over. I'll probably still be the next couple meetings because of River Farm. But yeah, congratulations to Nicole.
Congratulations, Nicole. And Laura, you obviously, I know you're not going anywhere in reality. You're still going to be around, but you have been fantastic. And Nicole has big shoes to fill, which I know she can already fill, though, because she has been working right alongside you. So this is the best transition we could ask for when it comes to folks changing around the spaces.
Yes, we're very excited, and hopefully it'll be a good, smooth transition for all of us, and I have no doubt that it will be. Yeah. So another thing, so we're working on the certified local government report for fiscal year 2020. And I need to, and I'll send out a reminder email about this, but I need to know the training that you did in the past year. I always ask for this, and you can just provide 1 or 2 examples of training that you have either relative to your job or profession, or historic preservation trainings that you've gone to. But I will send out an email reminder, and I need that in the next week or 2. Oh, Nicole just texted me and said her computer is frozen, but she's excited to work with everybody and continue working with everyone. So technological difficulties will not stop us. So yes.
Will she get a new computer as a result of this promotion?
Hopefully. I will say too, the last couple meetings I've had with WebEx, not with just the ARB, but with our Holland Hills meetings too, I've been kicked off almost every time. You saw that once tonight. It's happened the last couple meetings, and it's happened with my Holland Hills meetings. And so I need to figure out if I'm the only one having it, but it seems like Nicole's having the problem too. So I think it's more of a IT thing, and I am working on it. And thank you for, we have multiple hosts so that if I get kicked off, the meeting doesn't shut off. But we will make sure there's at least one other county employee on the meeting in case that happens. So thank you for bearing with us. It just is what it is. Yeah, I will send you an email back to the training. Yeah, but I always ask you every year for the training as a CLG. ARB members are required to take a training, and it can be related to your professional job or for Heritage Resources, or sometimes the Virginia Department of Historic Resources provides a training, and I don't think they did one this past year.
Yeah, this last year kind of got a wrench thrown into it. I'll point out, if you're looking for other types of trainings, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation's online portal, all our on-demand trainings are free.
Shameless plug, Chris, but yes.
Well, we have to get our CLG certification, so
yes.
For folks that may not have gotten something or need to get it for next year, obviously, please take advantage of it.
Right.
Any other announcements or?
Also to add, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, we get discounts because of our professional membership in the National Trust. And then also, I attended the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions this year, which was really quite good. I was impressed. I did not expect much, and I found myself impressed. So that's another good one to watch out for, because it's all about local preservation commissions.
And I do have one more announcement. The Laurel Hill Central Green bathrooms that came in last month, I'm looking for a couple volunteers, aka architects. They're looking to change their design. They got a lot of kickback from the community. They did not like the contemporary design that came in, similar to the Lidl that we just had. but I am looking to have, it doesn't necessarily have to be architects, but at least one architect to have a discussion with them. I think the Lorton Heritage Society is looking for more of a brick material, as well as the Park Authority has kind of changed their mind about it as well. But Kelly Green, Kelly Davis, who has worked with us last month, had asked if we could have another kind of offline meeting like we did for the W13, W15 buildings. And John, you can't participate because I think they're looking for tax credits. But everyone else, if you're interested, you can let me know now or send me an email. But they're hoping to kind of get some feedback about that. Another thing, like, it was just funny, the Lidl conversation came back and they wanted brick, and it seems like this one they're looking more for brick to match the kind of Lorton industrial that's out there now. So just let me know if you're interested, and I am happy to kind of, Nicole and I can facilitate a meeting between you and Kelly and the architects for that project.
Laura, I'd be willing to participate.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Thank you very much, Steve. I really like the modern design, but oh well, alas. All right. There are no other announcements. There is no old business on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yes, Ms. Wan.
Yes. I do have something I want to bring it out. There are a couple of times in Homes Run Acre HOD meeting. Couple of times the neighbor there was talking about concern with ZMOD. And they even bring up that asking if Holland Hill HOD meeting has a similar concern got brought up. The concern, I wasn't really familiar with the residential zoning part, but the concern they have is the change on the single family house will trigger the community become more dense. And it's not a permit required. It will be an administrative permit. So I wasn't looking into it, but I just thought, I just hoping someone may know a little bit more about it. No.
Are they concerned about the accessory dwelling units?
Yes, that's the terminology.
Yeah. So, and Nicole, feel free if you want to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so Samantha summarized it. They're concerned because obviously you can already have them on single-family detached homes, but they're going to change it so now it's not. If you can administratively approve it, I guess not us, but is it the BZA, Laura, that would do that?
If it's a special permit, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so, yeah, they had some questions because they have concerns about it, obviously changing the character of the neighborhood. And then obviously if that is the case, how does that affect a historic overlay district, and is it worth it, kind of thing. So we have Herman and Casey coming to our meeting in 2 weeks to talk about it for the first half hour to kind of explain a couple of them. There's one person in particular had very specific concerns about it. And so hopefully that will be able to answer their questions better. Because I think they thought then it would be too easy and everybody would be adding accessory dwelling units, especially because the houses, the way that some of them are built that are 2 stories. They very much have individual stories that like have entryways. So you could easily turn one of the floors into a separate apartment kind of thing. So we're going to have them come and talk, and hopefully that will help quell some of those fears and answer a lot of those questions. But yeah, at Pollen Hills, if anybody wants to listen in, it might be helpful.
Yeah, Ryan Johnson, our secretary, in his day job works for the Zoning Administration Division, and just informed me that with use limitations, an accessory dwelling unit would be something you could do by right with an administrative permit issued by staff. So you wouldn't necessarily have to go to the BZA, but I do know there are specific design requirements and square footage requirements. And I think, Nicole, is it R2 for Homes Run Acres as well?
No, there are 3.
R3. But there's a certain, I think, acreage requirement for detached structures. So like granny pods and things like that wouldn't
Yeah,
necessarily
they
be
don't,
around.
I don't think they have enough acreage to do, it's just the attached that they're concerned about.
Or the internal. So a lot of them
Internals,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them either are additions or that I've seen before are in basements. And so usually it's a square footage, like I think it's, and I don't know what ZMod has, but it was like 30% of the house couldn't be accessory dwelling unit, and it can only be a certain number of people. Ryan's correcting me in the chat. 35%, 2 acres. But yes, Ryan, feel free to jump in if you want to just chat and take over. But 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 yeah, so I know there are, even though it would be an administrative requirement, and they'll talk about this at the meeting, Carmen and Casey are much more well versed in it than I am. But they'll talk about it at the meeting. There are still certain kind of thresholds they have to meet for size, square footage, number of people living there, etc. So it's not just like an ad hoc, I want to do it. I kind of call it the wet bar permission, a second kitchen in your basement type thing, where it's going to be a lot more rigorous than that. And they still have to meet requirements, but might not necessarily have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So yeah. And Nicole, I'm wondering too, and this is what I kind of did for Holland Hills, was how many accessory dwelling permits had been approved in that neighborhood in the past so many years or whatever. And that's something I can kind of help you look up, but just to kind of quell and quash their fears a little bit about how often that happens, which it's not very often.
I mean, I think luckily Lily's been there the whole time.
Oh, good.
So she's touched on a lot of that. I also think that the concerns are bigger than just that, and Samantha can probably back me up. Like there's been other things about ZMod that they've had concerns about. So and how it affects the HOD. So yeah.
Okay. All right, Carmen and Casey are perfect to have there. They'll answer all your questions about ZMod. I'm sure they can talk about it in their sleep. They've come to us a bunch of times on it. So anyway.
Okay. Thanks for bringing that up, Samantha. I'll keep an eye out for that if I start to attend some of those in the future. Any other
information?
Any other old business or new business? Seeing none, we're at the end of our agenda, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. And motion to adjourn is always in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good job, Chris. Good night.
Yeah, good job, Chris. And Jason, good job.
Yeah.
Thanks. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Laura.
Good job, Chris.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Ryan.